up until now, I've not spoken about it. I posted something this year, which would have been my dad's 80th birthday, and it's the first time I've ever done anything like that. I don't even talk about it to my brothers. For us all, it's just so fragile. Talking to people does help, but it's finding the chance to bring that conversation in.
Hello, and welcome to On the Marie Curie Couch, the podcast that aims to break down taboos and start open, honest conversations about death and dying. I'm Jason Davidson. I'm a social worker by profession, and I've worked in palliative care, hospice care, and bereavement support services for more than a decade. Each episode, we'll be speaking to a well-known guest to find out how they feel about their own mortality and how their personal experience of bereavement has shaped the way they live their life. Today, I'm on the Marie Curie couch with Andy Ryan. Andy was a contestant on 2024's The Great British Bake Off. Since then, he's appeared across the media and at multiple live events, including the Foodies Festivals, the Cake and Bake Show, and Good Housekeeping Live, and has been named as one of Feedspot's top 40 UK baking influencers of 2025. He will return to the Bake Off tent for this year's Great British Bake Off New Year special. And he lives in Essex with his partner and daughter. Andy Ryan, welcome to On the Marie Curie Couch.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. You're welcome. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Been a busy weekend. Managed to nick a point from Chelsea yesterday, after all. I'm an Arsenal fan, so it could have gone either way. A tough week. We come out of it. But other than that, it's all good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Good. I'd like to start today with a question that we always begin with, Andy, to ask if you could tell me about a significant bereavement that you've experienced in your life.
Well, there's been quite a few, but the one that hit the hardest was losing my father when I was 13 to pancreatic cancer,
Right.
which we didn't know he had up until obviously the day passed. But yeah, it was, quite a very difficult time. One I don't really like to talk about too much because it just hurts too much. But, as I'm getting older, you need to sort of start facing them conversations, because as I'm getting older, then more and more people are going through cancer, passing away with cancer. And I found talking to people that are going through that did help them. So, yeah.
And you were only 13.
Yes, I was just 13 at the time. My older brother was coming on to 15, nearly 15. My younger brother was 6, nearly 7 at the time. My mum was doing everything. It was really difficult because at that time as well, my nan was in early stages of dementia, and she lived down the road, and my mum was also caring for her whilst working and trying to sort of keep all the balls in the air, so to speak. 3 dogs and a cat. It was chaos. And I suppose my mum's the strongest person I've ever known or ever will. Never moaned, always got on with it, always still made 3 meals a day, all home cooked. He was just a Wonder Woman, to do all that. And never complained, never needed help, always done it herself. And I suppose as a young man, well, as a boy, you don't understand that. And you wish you could go back to that 13-year-old boy and say, look, give your mum a break. She hasn't got time for everything, And I think as boys, you want answers as well, because all of a sudden, a massive part of your life is not there anymore. And it was just awful. It was just awful times. But I suppose that sort of shaped me to who I am now, because there's so many other paths I could have gone and taken. But for me, I just wanted to prove myself and sort of give myself a chance in life and try and work as hard as I can to do well and to buy the things that I couldn't have as a child because we didn't have the money. So it was all about going out. So from then, from I must have been nearly 14 when I got my first job as a Saturday boy doing engine reconditioning, just because my mum couldn't afford to give me that much pocket money, and the children at school around me had, you know, nice things and money and could buy things. And for me, I needed to become sort of the man of the house. But my older brother was obviously the man of the house, even though he was only, 14 months older than myself. But he was quiet and very reserved, and I think we all tackle it in different ways. My younger brother was too young to realise what was going on. So yeah, I just worked, and I found that helps give me that independence. So yeah, it was just horrible, horrible times. But my mum was she is such a fun, loving lady. Always sees the joy in life and happiness, and it was through her meals and loads of episodes of Only Fools and Horses that got us through them dark times, and because it was the only thing that could ever put a smile on my face. Watching Norman Wisdom, the old films just, yeah, was the only comfort we had. And there was no one there at the time that we could talk to or had that sort of support there, which is a shame. Everyone's more aware of this now, and there is a lot more support now, which is brilliant. Like you guys do so much good for everyone, and I'm sure there's cases worse than myself that where there's young children that need that help and support and just someone to talk to, really.
Thanks, Andy. And I think you touch on some really important things there that will definitely resonate, with people listening who've maybe experienced a death when they were children and or young people now, with a parent who's died or is dying. And there was something there about the kind of financial impact as well. So, for parents, if both or one is the breadwinner working and bringing money into the home, well, actually, when they are no longer able to work and or they've died and they're not around anymore, then that can have a significant financial impact on the income of the household and the whole family, isn't it? As well as all of the emotional impact that you're talking about as well. And also, you mentioned there about having so many questions at that point as well. So, what we know is, as well, with grief, it can be a really confusing time. And trying to make sense of what's happened, trying to make some meaning of it, kind of getting your head around it. And actually, what we know is for young people and for children, if they're not given information, it's different today, of course, than it was when you were 13. I mean, and different for many reasons. Of course, young people have access to information via the internet now, but sometimes that can have its pros and have its cons because of the kind of information they might come across. But I think that what you're describing there about having questions, I think it's that it depends on the circumstances of how somebody's died, whether there was any knowledge about why they were ill and why they were sick, and whether that information was shared with children in the first place. And what we know is there was definitely a period of time, and I think there still is for some people, where people are scared about sharing information with children because they think it'll upset them. And there's that protective element. And actually, well, it probably will upset them because it's really upsetting and it's sad and it's difficult. But that's okay because then you can support the young person when they're upset. I think if we withhold information, then it can become a little bit more complex and sometimes complicated because a young person doesn't have a clue what's going on, and that can be harder.
Yeah, I think as well with my mum being so busy with these sort of questions, I don't think she had the answers. Which no one had the answers. So, and I think there led quite numb, and certainly it has made me harder in life in the heart, if that makes sense. I think when you've had that trauma at such a young age, you do get barriers, you do get shields, you are frightened to get close to people just in case. And, you know, it's just an awful thing to happen to anyone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think what you were saying earlier at the beginning of the conversation is also really key, that bit about you've known people as an adult. And of course, what you also do now is you look at that experience through really different eyes, don't you? Because you've got the wisdom of life and you've got life experience. And we look at those experiences in hindsight, and there can be good and bad to that. Not good and bad, but maybe sort of pros and cons. And I think that what you touched on at the beginning was that you have experienced grief as an adult, but also you've known people who've experienced grief, and they've talked to you about the fact that they talk about it, and talking about it helps. And there's that bit as well, isn't there, now about, well, actually, if I can't talk about it because it feels too painful, then how do I get to that point where, I'm kind of letting it out, if you like?
100%. And that's what I think is really important with what you're doing with, especially these podcasts, because up until now, I've not spoken about it. I posted something this year, which would have been my dad's 80th birthday, and it's the first time I've ever done anything like that. But it's just too painful to talk about. But I knew that I had to put something on my socials just to, let everyone know that, he would have been 80 that day, and it would have been such a great passing. Yeah, just to mark that day. For me, I had to feel like I had to do something to mark the day. But other than that, I don't even talk about it to my brothers. My mum will, we reminisce, but it's not that deep conversation because for us all, it's just so fragile. It's just too much to deal with, and talking to people does help, but it's finding the chance to bring that conversation in because it's very difficult to say, oh, do you know, by the way, this happened to me and this happened to me. And it can sort of, blindside someone. And where's that conversation come from, sort of thing, rather than when you're doing something like this podcast, which is the nature of the conversation is about your previous past death experiences. You can get off your chest. You can sort of speak about it because that's why we're here,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. So how do we begin those conversations? How do we have them? And it's kind of getting the right moment. And is there ever a right moment? Can I ask, Andy, what do you think would happen if you did talk to your mum and your brothers about it?
I think I don't know. I think it would bring out a lot of emotion, a lot of emotion, and I think that's what we're all scared of, because that emotion is just it's too painful to deal with. It's because we're all feeling it, and I think we're all very aware of having empathy from brothers and the mum to not bring us back to that time again, that difficult time. And from a younger brother, I feel quite selfish in a way that he didn't spend that much amount of time with my dad as I did. So he doesn't have many memories. So for him, it's like he can't bring much to that conversation of remembering this and remembering that. And I know it's quite hurtful for him because, you know, he wasn't around that long. I think it's just trying not to bring too much emotion out. And it's quite scary, to go back there. I think because all of the armor you've built up over them years, you're suddenly taking it off and you feel very exposed. And it's just too upsetting, to be honest.
I think what you're describing is shared by many people. And I think that'll be really helpful for people listening today, certainly those who might have experienced a bereavement many years ago. And there's that fear of kind of taking the lid off, and that fear of it being like an explosion. And also that protectiveness where you want to protect each other as a family from taking the lid off and what might happen. The reality is often really different. And actually, just going back to what you were talking about earlier about, being an adult now and having wisdom and life experience and hindsight, then your brothers and your mum will all have that as well. And so it isn't going to be like it was when you were 13 in that moment, because you've all evolved. So it will be painful, but it will be different. And the explosion might not be as big as you all fear. But as you say, it's that kind of taking the step and how is it done and how do you do it and when and where and in what context. And yeah, I think there's something about kind of small steps, isn't there? And I wonder whether actually one win is about letting them know you've done this podcast.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And hopefully that will start the conversation.
I just want to say before I move on, thank you for going there, and like with me today and here, because I can hear it's not easy, you've made that clear. I hope it's been okay to touch on it. I do want to ask what it was like when you did the post for your dad's 80th this year and what reception that post got, how it was received.
Yeah, yeah. I remember just sitting there hovering over the post button to share it, and if I was doing the right thing, if it was going to upset my brothers, and my brothers are not really into social media, and up until obviously the Bake Off, I wasn't really in social media at all. But during my time with the Bake Off and speaking to other people, I found that there's also other people that have gone through so many traumatic experiences. So for me, I wanted to mark with Dad just to see what response, not to see what response, but obviously to mark. Ultimately, that was what it was about, is for me to make that first initial step into talking about it, I suppose, and hoping that it might gauge conversation, in which it did. I had so many people just messaging me saying about their awful experiences and what their dad gone through, and that their fathers had also passed away, and like not as young as me, but in their teens, early 20s, of pancreatic cancer. And yeah, just thanking me for just sharing my story, even though it was just a glimmer of a caption of what I put in, because it was too painful. I mean, the more I wrote, the more I found myself getting really emotional as I was writing, and I had to stop. I had to stop because it was, yeah, it's too raw. But I posted it, and yeah, and I felt good in a way that I was strong enough to do that, and that this doesn't have to control me, I suppose, because it has done for so many years, because I don't want to talk about it because of all of the pain and the anger that you get. And for me, it felt like a step forward from that.
That's so good. That's so good. Like, well done for doing that post because, I mean, yeah, massive hats off to you. I mean, that's a huge step, Andy, isn't it? And I think, as you saying as well, you knew where your limits were. So you started writing it, and actually, there was a point where you just couldn't go any further because it was too much, but you still were able to post what you were able to post. And then getting that response from others who were essentially saying to you, thank you, because what you did was you'd help them. And I think that's what we hear from people who listen to this podcast as well. They say, and I'm always really moved by this. People say, hearing other people's experiences of grief and bereavement makes me feel less alone with mine. And I think that's so important because grief can be really isolating and can make you feel like you're on your own with it and you're the only person in the world. And that's not a thing that can last 5 minutes. Sometimes, as you're describing, that feeling can last for years. And so actually, when somebody shares something or talks about their experience, then that can make lots of people feel less alone, certainly on socials. And it sounds like that's what you did with your post. But also, so there's something there about it being a step forward for you, but also sounds like it was a step forward for many others as well. And that's pretty special, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I suppose it once again opened up that conversation, didn't it, for others to respond, and for them that made them talk about their experiences with it. It's hopefully helped, and that's what it's all about, you know.
Yeah. And that might have even been the first time for them as well, talking about their experiences.
Marie Curie's mission is to close the gap in end-of-life care. We're here for anyone with an illness they're likely to die from, and those close to them. Whatever the illness, wherever you are, we're with you to the end. Find out more at mariecurie.org.uk.
I wanted to ask Andy about whether you were able to, either as a child or as an adult, whether you were able to talk about some of the things that helped you or help you in those times of grief and bereavement. You did touch on, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so I know Norman Wisdom, and I know them Norman Wisdom films and love them. And so you did touch on Only Fools and Horses and Norman Wisdom and film and comedy being something that was helpful for you. Can you say a bit more about that or anything else that's helped you?
Yeah. So in them very dark times as a youngster, when you should be happy, smiley, and no problems in life, um, found it very difficult to put that smile on your face. We used to, like, my dad would always watch Only Fools and Horses, and we'd sit there and watch it, and we used to laugh together. But up until, and I suppose enduring his death, we didn't. And it was a little while after. I remember my mum going up the shop and buying the video Jolly Boys Outing. Said, "Come on, let's watch. We used to like this one," so we watched, and we was all in fits of laughter through start, and which I think, without realising it, my mum just had cracked the nut. Do you know what I mean? She brought that smile back out on us, and this is an actual fact. We watched that video, that one episode, feature length episode, so much my mum had to go and buy another video because we worn the video out, and me and my brothers can recite Only Fools and Horses. And my partner, she said, if there was ever a mastermind subject, it would be Only Fools and Horses for you, because there's not much I don't. And even like on Sunday, like Sunday on UK Gold, I just have it on all day, every day in the background, just talking all through the lines of it all. And for me, that allowed me to, I suppose, let things go and laugh and see the joyous. And I suppose as well, I then went out on the back of that through 13, 14, 15, 16, collecting all the videos then into DVDs of Only Fools and Horses, so I could watch them all the time, from series 1 all the way to series 7, the Christmas specials, etc., the feature length episodes. And I just, I watched them and watched them and watched them, into a point that I looked at David Jason as some sort of father figure without him realising, and you don't realise, but you start taking on board mannerisms. And even when I was in the Bake Off, a couple of people said to me, I think even Natalie Cassidy, who was on my extra slice, said, "You are the Del Boy of the Great British Bake Off." And I think it's because of their mannerisms that is embedded into me, because for me, he was my hero. as a young kid, because he made me laugh so much. And he took me out of so many dark times. And it's the same as Norman Wisdom. Norman Wisdom, me and my nan and brothers sit there watching Norman Wisdom back to back. And just even now, my daughter watches Only Fools and Horses, Norman Wisdom, all the classics on the buses, all the classics, Porridge, and because it's just something lovely about the way it's written and how it makes people feel, and people can resonate with characters and storylines. And yeah, that was my escape. That was it. Just watching Only Fools and Horses, and it was just the only way I suppose I could deal with the anger and the hurt was to laugh. And to this day now, I see the happy side of life. I don't try and see the doom and gloom. I don't get tied up in the politics of life. I try to keep happy and positive, and just trying to make people laugh, telling jokes, just being silly, really, because it makes other people feel happy. And I suppose a lot of my life, I've put myself down. Even now, I put myself down just to make others laugh, because that's what I want to do. Because I would never want anyone to feel that hurt or that pain. It's not in me to do that. So yeah, it's Only Fools and Horses, eh?
There's a theory in bereavement around something called continuing bonds. It was something that was developed in the 90s. And what they talk about is how we used to, there was a time when, people thought the best thing to do when somebody died was to forget about them and to move on and to not revisit it, because actually it was kind of harder and difficult and we shouldn't revisit it. But actually what we know now is differently, and so we're encouraged to be more open and talk about it, because what we know is we can't forget about the person, and we know that grief never ever leaves us. We just learn to deal with it and live with it and manage it, hopefully. And I was thinking about continuing bonds when you were talking, because actually Only Fools and Horses has definitely been a continuing bond for you and your dad, hasn't it? And for your brothers and your mum and your dad, because actually Only Fools and Horses is your dad as well, isn't it, in a way, because he loved it. And I was really moved. I was so struck, Andy, by that moment when your mum came home with the tape and you all put it in and you watched it and you were all laughing from beginning to end the first time you sat together, because I think it was a real release. I could feel the release for all of you. Like it was like this tension that was like released in this watching the series, and so you kept going back to it and watching it again and again. And I just kind of wonder whether actually what was happening there through the watching of the program and the release of the laughter and the tension, you were all grieving together with your dad as well. And I think that sounds beautiful to me. And I think for, lots of people listening as well, what it tells us is there's different ways to grieve, that we don't follow any kind of pattern or sort of like strict rules around it. And we do it in our own way and what's best for ourselves. I just want to say something else before I go on to my next question, but it was just that bit about, and often I think children experience this, but everybody does, no matter what our age are. That thing about, should we be happy? How much time do we allow ourselves to be sad? And actually, when your dad's just died, it's totally normal and natural to be really sad and have some other feelings as well, like anger and confusion and sadness. But what we do is, like I talked about earlier, is certainly within the family, we want to protect each other. So we might not want to show them things in front of each other, but actually everybody's feeling them, but we're trying not to show them. And then we're trying to be happy when we don't feel happy, and you can't force it. And there's something about, I think, permission and allowing each other, isn't there, to be sad when you need to be. So I just want to thank you for mentioning that as well, because I think that's an important one and it's a difficult one to juggle.
Yeah, and people deal, as we all know, people deal with grief in all different ways, and there isn't a right or wrong way. There's just, you've got to give yourself that time. And for me, certainly at that age, I didn't think that I would ever laugh again. And I remember I was crying before we got the phone call to say it passed. I got a computer out he brought us for Christmas that was up in the loft. It was an old Spectrum. Then we got this in the sort of mid-80s, late 80s, a shared present between me and my brothers. And I don't know why, and I still don't know for this day, that it was a hot day in May, and my nan was looking after us downstairs. My mum had gone to the hospital because she had got the call. And I was in my bedroom, and I, for some reason, just got it from the loft, come down, plugged it in, just started playing this computer. And my older brother come in and went, "What are you playing the Spectrum for?" Because I had a Master System. "Why aren't you playing your Master System?" I said, "I don't know, I just want to play the Spectrum." And a minute after that, got a phone call, and my nan had answered it, and she went, "Oh," and I could hear her crying downstairs. And I didn't need to be told. I just knew. My heart had broken instantly that day. I just flooded with tears. Yeah. And it was just, never recovered. And I promised I'd never cry anymore after that. After his funeral, that was me done. Can't bring myself to that emotion. It's just too hard.
It was too painful. It's such an you were too overwhelmed. It all felt too overwhelming. You didn't ever want to go back
No.
there.
Yeah, so that's why I just want to see the happiness and positive. But I didn't think I'd ever be able to smile again. I didn't think that I'd be able to enjoy life with them. And that sounds awful for a 13-year-old boy to think, but that's, for me, was how I felt. And just laid on my bed, didn't want to move. Relatives was coming around, my aunts, my uncles, talking to me, "Don't worry, we'll be all right, we'll get through this," all that. I couldn't bring myself to come downstairs. I was all downstairs. I just couldn't leave my room. Didn't want to leave my room. So I felt if I stayed there, it wouldn't be real. Yeah, just the most awful thing in the world.
What you're describing, Andy, they're really normal reactions. What you're describing is a really normal response for a 13-year-old whose dad's just died suddenly, and it's overwhelming and painful, and you're in your room and you can't go downstairs. Totally understandable. I think that thing about when you were saying about never recovering, and I mean, probably not for now because I don't want to keep you all day, but I think that that's sometimes an interesting one to look back on. Like I was saying earlier, how there's another theory of grief about the fact that it never ever goes away, and I believe that one as well. I believe that we just grow around it, so it stays there and it stays the same size, but we grow around it and we get bigger, and that we do learn to live with it and we function and we go on to live a fulfilling life like you've done and like you're doing. I don't know whether that sort of resonates with you, whether does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we grow around it, and so it's still there, and we can still feel it. I think you've talked about those barriers and some of all those impacts of it, and you can feel some of those impacts are still there, and there's some things that you're working through, and it can take a long time.
It does take time, and I think everyone deals with life differently. For me, I've just put myself into work and to try to make my mum proud. And I know she is, ultimately, she's so proud of me and both her brothers as well, so all three of us. But you're always just trying to achieve more and more and more and trying to do your best you can. Just for my dad's sake, he never got that chance to say that, and he never will. So, but in my head, I believe the more I can do and the more I can achieve to make a better life. Hopefully, one day in the afterlife, be able to have that conversation.
I love that. I'm going to change tack slightly, but just before we do that, can I ask Andy if it's okay? What's your dad's name?
Jimmy, James.
Well, Andy, listen, thank you so much for talking about your dad and your experience. One of the aims of the podcast is to open conversations about death and dying, because we know that when people prepare, for example, if they're living with a terminal illness and they have the opportunity to prepare for their death or to talk about what they want from, what kind of care they might want, or having opportunities to do things like write a will, we know that that planning ahead is better for everybody. And so, with that in mind, or just generally, do you ever think about your own death?
Yeah, I mean, definitely me and me older brother's quite aware of, my dad was 48 when he passed, and I'm 45, 46 in February. My older brother's 47 this year, and he's 48 next year, and we've both got children, and the age between my daughter and me is the same age between my dad and me, if that makes sense. So when I'm 48, my daughter Maisie will be 13. And it's quite scary. It's quite frightening because obviously cancer being in the family, we are wanting to, I suppose, the last few years it's become a bit of a target, that age, if that makes sense at all. Because my dad was 48 and we want to exceed that by many years. And I think that's why we're very cautious about our health and our well-being. And, we look at life differently, certainly as I'm getting older, to see my daughter and knowing that I want to be around forever. So yeah, I do look at it, but I've said that obviously if I die, don't be sad, just scatter me ashes over the Emirates. don't, don't, and just try and keep the good memories. And I think that's why I try and leave a legacy behind, memories, because I think that helps. Didn't have many memories, and at the time there wasn't that much media or videos or stuff like that, or films that you can watch again and again. And I suppose that's one of not only the reason, but it's a lovely feeling to know that being on a Great British Bake Off not only fulfilled my dream of wanting to bake and the passion of food, but it's also great for my daughter to be able to watch and hopefully have children one day and see in time and time again that was me. So I suppose it's trying to write a legacy, really.
So that's going to be part of your legacy.
Yeah. And I'm still going to keep trying every single day. I'm trying to make a difference, trying to do well, trying to leave more behind so she can feel comfort, hopefully one day.
I love that. And just before we finish off, can I just ask Andy, how has it been for you today having these conversations with me on the Marie Curie couch?
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason, and the team. Because without you talking to me about it today, I don't think I would have done. And I suppose that's sort of the way men are, certainly in my generation and older generations. We are a little bit more sort of cards on our chest. We don't speak often. We don't talk about real things that are bothering us or stories of our life. We just talk about the here and now. How football is, who's boxing, gym, going down the park. We don't talk about that sort of stuff. So for me to be on here today to open up, it's been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a really great message, Andy, as well, to end on. And if there's any men listening who feel like they want to talk, then if you don't have anybody in your life where you feel you're able to have those conversations with, then there's lots of other ways of having those conversations. There are many helplines out there as well where people, I know it's dead hard making that first step, but people, you can pick up the phone and you can have a supportive ear at the other end of the line just to be able to begin those conversations and start talking. Because as Andy said at the beginning of our conversation today, and as we know through our work, it does help. Andy Ryan, I want to thank you for coming on the Marie Curie couch today. I want to thank you for sharing a bit of your dad Jimmy's story, and it's been great to meet you.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's been lovely to meet you too. Thank you.
So that's all for this episode of On the Marie Curie Couch. We hope it's got you thinking about matters of life and death, and perhaps starting those conversations with your own friends and family. Marie Curie's here to help. From planning ahead to coping with bereavement, you can talk through any concerns you have around the end of life with our support line team, which also includes specially trained nurses. Call us on 0800 090 2309 or search Marie Curie online. The podcast is produced and edited by Marie Curie with support from Ultimate Content. The music featured is Time Lapse by Pan Oceanic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Until next time, goodbye.